Here we go.
Welcome to the Peoria Art Guild's newest exhibition. We have Aareon Boyd here and Pieces, which is a whole body of work of his fiber. Quilts, creations, shall we say. Creations, because they are not traditional quilting, even though I think most of the process is like a quilt. Why don't you tell us just a short spew about yourself?
Yeah, well, my name is Aareon Boyd, born and raised from Peoria, Illinois. Got into the textile from my great-grandmother. When she passed away, she willed me her machine, and now I've upgraded to a bigger machine so I can get through these fabrics. And here we are today. I mean, fiber is still in my life, sewing's still in my life, so Grandma, she's still looking down.
Good, that's great. Well, we started out, and Jeff and I will say, we came over to your studio and we curated,
It's crazy,
truly curated
Yeah.
a fiber show because we are so excited about what you're doing. And I think that a lot of people know, we had Ken Burns' quilts over at the museum. At the MCA right now in Chicago, there's Faith Ringgold, who is a wonderful, wonderful traditional quilter for the most part, but she makes very narrative things. Most of your things are abstract. Most of your things are non-traditional quilt designs, but they're all full of energy and they're all full of patterns and all these things that make them great. Now, these three that we started with, actually, I know you don't necessarily do series, but to me, this is a series because there's this wonderful abstracted shape that you've gotten, and you've kind of repeated it as we've gone through. Why don't you mention, first of all, if anyone, when you come to see the exhibit, you're going to see that he identifies a lot of the fabric, and some of them are, one we'll show you has rocks that he and Grandma collected. So, but let's talk about these three first.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny that you say they're in a series because I'm sure they were created in the same week. I found these frames gifted through the community and I painted some of them, especially this one has a little marooner tint. And I mean, just looking at these pieces off top, I can see this couch material, leather. It was donated to me from an artist friend, and I use that as my backdrop for some of my dyed t-shirts that I do. So I work a lot in fabric, and this is my introduction to the wall here. And on the second one, as long as the third one, in this one I kind of see some sort of face, some sort of structure piece, untitled. I don't know what it is what it is. And I love how these kind of just like flare out. You can interact, textures, everything.
Well, I think it brings a lot of, I mean, not necessarily greatly three-dimensional, but it does give the relief a little bit more abruption to it. And I think what's interesting, especially here, and we'll see it as it goes, we have an old piece of carpet here. So it is actually your idea of fiber is anything that you can sew.
Yeah, anything I can get my hands on. Like I said, I updated my sewing machine. I've got a nice Juki, and I've gone through cut-off boots even.
Yes, and we'll see that one too. I think, now you don't do much sketching or anything before you do these,
piece by piece.
You just do it.
These creations are all done since this summer, so you can see I've been very busy. And these, through my sewing career, I've compiled sewing scraps, and this was the collection of trying to use those scraps. Use what you have, and that's what I've always started as. And piece by piece, start building, you move pieces around, you say, hey, and then you just make it happen.
Yeah. And once you sew it down, does it stay, or do you sometimes alter it and move it to someplace else?
It's done. I'm working a lot, working fast. I've locked into this style, so it's become easy. I'm blessed for that. But as you know, piece by piece, it happens.
Well, and I love this piece that you actually put the word Peoria into it, because you don't usually use verbiage of any kind. It's just really abstracted things, except for our wonderful little monogram that you devised, and it shows up quite often in it. But I love what you've done here because you literally, an artist, a painter would wrap a canvas, and you have wrapped these boards or canvas, these stretchers, and it takes them all the way around. And I think it really makes it's not a flat surface, it's one that has some kind of like a hug sort of thing. It's like, you know, it's gone all the way around it. And I do notice, and we'll see another piece that has the same leafy kind of structure that you have, and you repeat that. And I don't know if you cut out them all at the same time.
So those were done at the same time. They were done, I was working on a commission for a client, and they wanted flowers, so I made some patchwork flowers. This is that leather material from the couch over there. As you can see, it's different. I used that for my paint palette as I went on and painted and just kept building.
And this piece is really wonderful. We do have the rocks here that you did. And I think the other thing is that this is the only piece that you've really strongly made obvious the painting part. And this is a bed sheet, I believe, isn't it? And so we have a bed sheet, and then we have all these other fabrics. And where do you source your fabrics from?
So I go to furniture stores. They have discontinued textiles. There are some in the local area that you can find. Especially this thick, nice material. You can get it, and they're usually going to throw it away. And what I do is I get it, make it. These were actually bags before, and I ripped them apart and threw them on this large piece I had here. This wasn't painted before, and I was just really focusing on the sewing part of it. But as an acrylic painter as well, I just felt that it needed something to fill in these gaps, and I only did what I know, and I did what I did.
Well, I love in this case, you've taken a piece of fabric and you've painted on it, but it adds a different texture. Meaning, I mean, it already was a different texture. This one has a lot of horizontal fibers going this way, but then you disrupt it with your paint. But that's not always necessary.
It's always
true for you.
The beauty and destruction.
And I think this one is probably the most quilted piece that you have, and the fact that it's a series of pieces of material that are formed together and sewn like you would a traditional quilt. And there's not much, there's no disruption to it at all. But I do, again, like how you just intersperse your monogram. How did you come up with your monogram?
So I started with one line, and I drew it 1,000 times, and on the 2000th try, I got this thing here. And it's a quick, easy motion, and I've gone from the streets to the walls.
And it's it's really quite wonderful. And I think it's on steroids when we get to this very large traditional piece. It's literally squares, so which is for original quilts, especially from like the 1860s and onward, that they did squares. And they would all put together these squares. Many people might be working on them at one time. All of these are uniquely yours, but this is I think the most traditional. And I love the numerous patterns that you've been able to find and to put them together in these very organic shapes as opposed to hard lines and geometric lines.
This was actually the first and only quilt that I used patterns for. I've got 3 different separate patterns that I've repeated over and over, and it doesn't always happen right. Sometimes there's a mistake here, but maybe it's a happy accident.
Well, you know, with the Amish, the quilts always had to have one thing, because only God is perfect, and so one of the panels had to have a mistake to it. So I think that works really well. Cool. I also think what's exciting is that you did. It's a series that we began the exhibit with are framed. They're very square. Here we've gotten an irregular shape, and I really think that it's kind of fun that we can think of things outside of a traditional square or rectangle. Here we've got this kind of stretched or pulled kind of square thing. I also think that it's wonderful. You put a pair of shoes in it, and I forget who's they're from. Ava's shoes. I mean, we even know that Ava doesn't have a shoe anymore, but we do know that.
You don't leave stuff out of the house.
But let's talk about how did you come to this shape and this form?
Started maybe from the piece. This is actually of a pair of pants that I made extra from a fabric that I did. And as you can see here, I sat down and did many, many stitches, and even on this part where I cut off and then flipped it around. So I just began building the shape, and I fell in love with the shape. And so I wrapped it around the edge with even the fiber and the back.
And I also like, in this case, this is one of the most sewn pieces, as far as you've got these wonderful dashes, these lines that are going back and forth, and the color changes. So the variation in color and the variation in texture really, I think, is quite remarkable. Now, this next piece that we have is one of your, I think, strongest collages. We've got this glove here.
Yes.
Ken Hoffman has used a glove in his paintings. Joseph Boyce has used a glove. A lot of artists have used glove. Motherwell, I believe, has even thrown in a glove before. But I think what's so incredible is you've got this hand, which represents the human being so much, but we've got these wonderful abstracted shapes, and the color theory here with this lighter against this darker really makes it warm, and this is just a really strong piece design-wise too. I think it really is. How did you arrange this kind of
It just
design?
as well as everything. It's piece by piece. I mean, I can tell you about this glove. I used to work at UPS, and that was horrible, but I kept the glove. And then this patch on top was from an old t-shirt that I cut off that I thought looked cool, and then did my tag on top. And that bed sheet, this is what it looks like non-painted, and the big one over there, that's what it looks like painted. And then these scraps here just found through cutting shapes randomly, and here we are once again.
In this case, which was the first piece that you started with? What started this particular
I know that the
artwork?
glove was last. I had the glove in my hand, or it was somewhere in a pile of scraps, and threw it. It fell just right. And I knew that was the one.
That's all it takes sometimes. This wall, we did a gallery wall, as we teased, but like 2 years ago, we were at an exhibit and we saw this wonderful, very large quilt that you had made, but you had backed it with this elastic, almost like a sheet, it probably was.
It was shower curtain.
Shower curtain. And anyhow, Jeff and I said, when we do your exhibit of fiber, we want this. And it's one of those times that the curator was so wrong because we tried and tried to get it to fit and work on this wall.
Right.
And it didn't. So instead you brought some of your smaller pieces. And what I like about the smaller pieces, they're like sketches because you see more of the simpler shapes
Right.
put together, and you see how you build the layers, especially like in this one is very traditional. I think what's very interesting, and this is a very Dada type thing, because we have the warning packs from cigars, and you're not to smoke them. Well, no one reads them. Everyone looks at them. They don't care.
Right.
But here you put them in, but you put them in upside down, so that it doesn't matter because people still aren't going to read
Right.
them. It's just the idea that those lines or those
The patterns,
caricatures
the colors, the
really
shapes.
work well with that piece. I think in this case, this is a little eyelet that you have here, and then you backed it with a piece of pink, where there's really no other. It just draws your eyes
So
right
a lot
in.
of these are old acrylic paintings that I've done, and through my progression as an artist, I felt it was time to wrap those old paintings. So that's what that pink is in there. So
Cool.
previous paintings.
Yes. So there is a history to these
Oh,
too.
for
A
sure.
lot of history. Here we have wonderful. This is where
Yeah.
the flower and the leaves shapes were cut out. This is probably the most painterly piece that you have in the show too, and it's a lot of cut up canvas-like material that you put back together. And I think it's interesting because it's almost like de Kooning as far as the shapes that you go together, but it's not so much about the painterly style, it's more about putting it all back together
Right.
and giving it a new life that
Right.
way. So
Yeah, I've done lighter covers. These are a lighter cover template after they've been cut out, and I had a bunch of them left over and decided to put it into a painting.
Great. Now this wall, it actually is what Jeff and I just really love this wall.
Yeah.
We have 3 different pieces in 3 different formats. We
Right.
have a wonderful found frame again
Yeah.
that you have, and it's much darker. You started using this black background, which really gives a different pop to color.
Absolutely.
As opposed to when you have white on it. And then all of a sudden you've got this neon green shape that really just takes over and draws the eye directly into it. Again, we have the grid from the sheet, and you use the grid quite often. In this one, this is one of the first really what I would call freestyle sort of kind of idea as far as the shape. It just kind of formed itself. And I love the idea that you attempted to do grommets without a grommet.
So you can hang it which way you want.
And tell us about this one, because again, this one has one of those sponges with a
so it's turf. From Landmark did a remodel, and they added turf into their building, and I saw a bunch in the trash, and I did what I did. I got in that trash, that dumpster, and I took a big load of turf back home. It was too thick for my old sewing machine, so once I got this new sewing machine, oh my goodness, and I could just sew through it with ease. And this is actually my first piece of this year, so new ideas from new spaces, and really loving it.
Do you like going with the irregular shape?
I do. I think definitely the one that we showed before was inspiration. And after my show in the Fine Art Fair of Peoria, Illinois, I got a lot of good comments, and I love my work has started from organic shapes. Just as my paint, I sew, and here it is more truer to myself than ever before.
Cool, cool. This is a really strong design-wise work of art. We have these wonderful shapes and lines that are coming and going, and you don't know which layer was actually first quite often.
Right.
I love the fact that you have most of these browns, and then you use this almost salmon colored cloth, and it just brings a lot. And the strong diagonals, I think, are really what's
flow.
Great. It does.
I mean,
and I know with your paintings, the flow,
right.
and this does have a flow to it,
right.
for sure. And again, so many different things. Why don't you talk about this shape, though, and how we got that?
That is definitely a sock that was pulled out of the wash, and had a hole in it. We don't throw away nothing over here. No scraps left behind. You know how I do it. So I chopped it up, I pulled it apart, and the black with the brown and the creams, everything it has to be there. So there it is.
Wonderful. These two pieces that we have here actually are three pieces.
Yeah.
When we went to the studio and chose them, we definitely wanted this. Again, it's wrapped, it's so full of energy. It's so 21st century quilting, fiber art. It is not, there's tradition in the fact that you have respect for people who made quilts by the traditional means, but you've just pushed it to the nth degree.
It's a process.
This piece here, which we determined was a diptych, he didn't have much choice into it. We had these two pieces, and we were working with designing the show and everything, and we laid them down, and we realized they really needed to be pushed together, and that they couldn't be separated, because we have this wonderful grid that you start here, and then this incredible dark shape that's just, it's so perfect, and it really helps bring you to this edge of this painting, of this work. But then we have down here, and it comes like this, and then this side is so energized. It is so crazy, but it's not like you just threw things down on top of it and started sewing. Each piece has been individually placed, and every one has been sewn on, and it is a myriad of different materials that you found. I think, is this from one of your paintings, or is that
a friend donate me a T-shirt, and he said do whatever to it, and I've never seen anybody put a T-shirt on a frame, so there it is.
There you have it. It really does work. We have a few pieces in here that we'll just quickly talk about, and then we'll wrap this up. These are pieces that when we couldn't get the big one in, he brought us numerous other pieces. And I think what's really wonderful about these, we have these twin quilts almost. They're actually mirror. And we have the AB, the monogram there. And they work so well together. And this would be one I'd say, buy both of them. Please buy both of them.
Gotta keep them.
And this is really, was this done with the others that you did at the beginning of the exhibition, or not?
No, this one's actually one of the older pieces as well. I had a book, a Dr. Seuss book, that I took apart and turned into fabric, and that's what the AB is made out of. And underneath I have just past scraps from the previous projects that I've taken and put into this piece.
That's great. Here is the work that has the rocks that you collected with your grandmother.
Yeah.
And I think it's really wonderful because this is your most sparse piece.
Yeah.
It really has just this wonderful white background that you've taken your machine and you've just kind of
Right.
taken us on a wandering journey
I really
through it.
wanted to show off what a white painting can do, even with this style. I mean, you see all
Yeah.
these colors, and then you see the white, and it has the same impact.
Well, and these three are obviously small scraps that you've had. We have the from when he was making the grommets,
Right.
cutting them out. Here we have all those shapes in a bag. And I think this is also a great opportunity to say that, you know, like you said, lots of scraps.
Lots of scraps.
We just lost a friend of ours, Trish Williams,
Right.
who is a wonderful fiber artist also. And going through her house, we have lots of scraps. And the thing is, as a fiber artist, each one of those has opportunity
Right.
and possibility. And I think it's really great that you don't discard things, that you give them new life as opposed to recycling them.
Right.
You know, I mean, it is a recycle in a way, but it really gives them new life.
Right.
The exhibit is up for the entire month. Please come and join us. We also will be having an upscale fashion event on the 24th of February. You can come, bring a couple of garments with you. We're going to have other material, and you can make your own Aareon Boyd piece.
No scraps left behind.
Thank you.